Hello, as promised, we're moving to Assassin's Creed, and here we are. So it's time to play. I'm trying to check something. This is my first time playing this game, so I'm trying to figure out what's where, and I hope you will bear with me. I didn't even read anything about this game, so it was recommended to me based on what I normally play, so let's try. Okay, so here is I just wanted to check what's here, so let's see. Okay, let's see something a little. Okay, I don't want to irritate my mind. No. Okay. Oh my. I feel like it's stuck. Okay, what's going on? Saving what? Loading, saving what? Seriously? Okay, loading what? Okay, something is weird. I don't get what's loading, saving. Okay. No, I don't want to. I'm skipping. Skip. Okay. I want to let you watch. Okay. Started to. Okay, got there. Woohoo! Oh, come on. 8 stations. Okay.
Welcome to Alexandria, planning of the city.
So why do I have to go this way?
Alexander's plan to build his great city began with a verse from Homer's Odyssey. There is, in front of Egypt, in the sea with many swells, an island called Pharos. Guided by these clues, Alexander the Great founded his future city at the western end of the Nile Delta.
So where should I go now? Hello? Okay, where am I? Okay, so how do I go down? Am I flying like an eagle? How do I get up here? Anyway. Station 1. Okay, so I should do this first. Okay. Interact with.
Alexander's plan to build his great city began with a verse from Homer's Odyssey.
Okay,
there is, in front of Egypt, in the sea with many swells, an island called Pharos. Though Alexander considered this location ideal for his great city, it presented considerable challenges. Too difficult to access during storms, the surrounding swamps threatened disease, and the limestone soil prevented the growth of healthy crops. The Great Walls of Alexandria had a humble beginning. Lacking chalk to outline the future city's foundations, architects were forced to use flour instead.
Oh my,
Excavations led by Mahmud Bey el-Falaki in the 19th century revealed that the wall enclosure measured approximately 5.2 kilometers in length and 2.2 kilometers in width. It was roughly 9. These formidable ancient walls would resist a number of attacks, including fending off the king of Syria in 169 BCE. It wasn't until 295 CE that they eventually fell to Roman Emperor Diocletian, and this only after 8 months of relentless assault.
Oh wow, I like this. Yay! So I can see this way. Oh my, and I go back this way. Whoa, this is good. Okay. Okay, so what is this for?
Της οφθαλμής γαρ δια νέα νεογήν, ου κοράς βλάξ.
Alexandria's principal architect, Dinocrates, chose a Hippodamian grid plan. The grid maximized functionality, with wide, straight roads and canals running beneath them. Alexander recognized the military value of the city's design. The wide, parallel streets gave him optimal surveillance of the city, while allowing the unobstructed flow of troops.
Okay, so this is sailing. There's some more.
Θεοί, αδαΐσεστη, οφθαλμούς είναι αιώρων απόλεσαι.
Hello, what's going on?
A central corridor ran from the Mediterranean's north port down to Lake Mareotis to the south. This thoroughfare acted as an unobstructed link for commercial trade and travel between the two ports. Many of the streets were bordered with grand buildings and parks, including Canopic Street, with its impressive gate bordering the eastern end. Alexandria was most likely built upon an already existing Egyptian village. Upon its completion, the Egyptians reviled the city, refusing to call it by its founder's name. Instead, they called it Raked, the building, as a mark of disdain, which was later Hellenized into Rakotis. Despite this, the name Alexandria would remain.
What now? First visit.
Χαίρε,
Achievement.
τι πράττει.
Woo. New tour. Okay. Where to? Yay. Okay. No, why not? This one. No. And why was I here? This was introduction. No, why I wasn't here? Okay. What now? I was here, right? Yes. This is what? Okay, so nothing is happening. Oh, I have to hold it. Okay. So why am I here? Cycle?
Idiodin! Elavni nugi gnostis!
Oh my God.
Amaxa elavni kagagisteos!
Welcome to Alexandria, a commercial hub. The ports of Alexandria were a major commercial hub, effectively connecting Egypt with the Mediterranean regions and beyond. A tremendous amount of materials and goods flowed through the city on a daily basis. The large port market was called the Emporion. It was there that merchandise was traded by the ship owners, called nakliros. Food and other artisan work streamed out of Egypt. Ceramics, glass, golden rings, and minted coinage. The local potters, using traditional Egyptian techniques, competed with those from abroad, and the textile industry flourished. What Egypt did not produce itself was acquired through trade, using local resources such as wheat and papyrus. Most sought after was pine wood from Syria, iron and marble from the Greek islands, gold from Spain, and exotic fruits from Europe. All this commercial activity contributed to the already decadent wealth of the city.
No, this one. This is it. British situation besides the prison.
The wood imported to Port Mariotis through Alexandria's seaward ports was used in the nearby shipyards, where most of Egypt's ships were built. Employing tens of thousands of shipbuilders, the shipyards contributed to establishing the Egyptian fleet as one of the mightiest of the era. Any wood not used in shipbuilding was further disseminated through Egypt for various purposes.
Okay. Oh my, this is cool. Okay, so if I do this, like this, and this. Oh no. Okay, so going back. What happened? Sorry, blackout. Get out of my way, young Russian.
The southern port of Lake Mareotis was the biggest in Alexandria. Save for a branch angling westward, the lake's size in the Ptolemaic era was roughly 40 to 50 kilometers from north to south. Its waters were maintained by a steady runoff from the Nile. In addition to the lake, a man-made canal was created to assist in... Banking was one of the most distinctive innovations brought by the Greeks to Egypt. The centerpiece of Alexandria's wealth was the royal systematization of taxes on almost everything. Basic items such as salt, oil, beer, wheat, and linen. By the late 12th century, the channel feeding the lake from the Nile silted up. Lake Mareotis lost its connection to the Mediterranean, as well as most of its water, as the lake slowly evaporated to a fraction of its former size.
Okay, so I can do this.
In modern times, Lake Mareotis is being kept alive through irrigation. However, only about 17% of its original size remains.
Okay. Hop, hop. I want to try this. Let's see if I can go. Okay, so... Okay, so where I go now? How do I go? Even? Oh my. How do I do that?
Χάρη να πούμε τις θεείς ότι έσωσαν εδώ.
Okay, so this is back. Okay. Let me say something. Oh my, check this. And why this is going this way? Statues of gods could nod and talk. Whoa, whoa. Like some sort of robots or something. Okay.
Welcome to the Greek Pharaohs.
Where are you? Where are you? Is there anything? Come on. Where are you?
Pharaohs were considered divine incarnations of the gods, as an avatar of the gods living. The Ptolemaic dynasty reigned over Egypt from 305 BCE to 30 BCE. The dynasty was born in 356 BCE. Alexander the Great went through a hasty education in the affairs of the kingdom before integrating into the Macedonian army, where he quickly rose through the ranks. After his father's assassination in 336 BCE, which some believed was orchestrated by Alexander himself, he became king of Macedonia. Ruler of a unified kingdom and the leader of a large army, Alexander set his son. Ever victorious, Alexander the Great marched on, laying siege. On his deathbed in 323 BCE, Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BCE. His remains were placed. Julius Caesar visited Alexander's tomb at the capture of Alexandria, and the Roman Emperor Augustus reportedly placed flowers there.
And today we will
However, though many
get to
powerful
know
leaders claim to have visited it,
everything
the tomb's location has gone missing from history. Some accounts do state that the golden coffin was replaced by a...
You will have to learn that on your own. I won't let you. I won't. I'm horrible. 11. Okay. No, no.
Welcome to Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt. Cleopatra VII Theophilopator ascended the throne in 51 BCE at the age of 18. Though her early attempts to maintain power were often challenged, she eventually prevailed and became the sole ruler of Egypt. According to Plutarch, she was the only It is important to understand that Cleopatra's knowledge of Egyptian language and keen understanding of the culture allowed her to make powerful ideological reference that resonated with ancient Egyptians. Upon his death in 51 BCE, Ptolemy XII Aulus bequeathed his kingdom to his daughter and eldest son.
For those who like
During Cleopatra's exile, the Roman Empire was not without its own internal conflict.
those who
Caesar and Pompey were at war with one another, and after his defeat in 48 BCE, Pompey fled to Alexandria in the hope of finding refuge. This turned out to be an unwise decision. Listening to his advisors, Ptolemy XIII elected to have Pompey assassinated. Cleopatra, aware of Caesar's anger against Ptolemy for the murder of Pompey, Ptolemy XIII was enraged by the turn of events, and his
I'm shortening this.
In June of
I don't
47
want to let you hear
BCE,
everything.
Cleopatra gave birth to a
You have
son,
to-
whom she called Caesarion. Caesar did not accept the boy as his heir, choosing instead his nephew Octavian. Nonetheless, on his return to Rome, Caesar invited the queen and her brother husband to stay in the city. Her presence still drew much disapproval from the Senate.
Oh my.
Always a strategist, Caesar left 4 legions in Egypt and a man he trusted to direct Egyptian affairs, giving him control of the wheat supplies essential to Rome. Cleopatra and her entourage. Caesar's most faithful ally, Mark Antony, often visited the Queen of Egypt during his stay in Rome. Unlike most, he recognized the legitimacy of Caesarion, the natural son of Caesar. Antony knew he would need the riches of... Despite his marriage to Octavia, Antony remained Cleopatra's lover, and she gave birth to their children. Cleopatra increased her kingdom's territory and started a political propaganda alongside her lover in Egypt and beyond. Octavian managed his own propaganda campaign and succeeded. The following events remain difficult to confirm due to the many versions and legends around them. It is believed that after hearing a rumor about Cleopatra's suicide, Mark Antony committed suicide himself. he was brought to the queen as he slowly passed away. Knowing that Octavian would have her chained and paraded through Rome in defeat, Cleopatra planned her own suicide. She most likely killed herself with arsenic, though admittedly the version where she uses an asp to deliver a fatal bite may be considered more dramatic. What happened to the body of Cleopatra is still a mystery.
Okay, so back. And so this is fun, kind of refreshing my knowledge. Okay, so what do you say so far? Oh, 22. He's gonna be long. Okay.
Welcome to the Siege of Alexandria. Among the collection of writings attributed to Julius Caesar are his The Siege of Alexandria closely relays the events of the civil war that led up to In the events leading up to the Siege of Alexandria, Cleopatra VII and her brother were fighting over control. Upon his arrival in Alexandria, Caesar was presented with Pompey's head. The sight of a Roman murdered by Egyptians did not sit well with him. Caesar made his displeasure clear, ordering the return of Cleopatra and for the siblings to resolve their differences and resume their co-rule of Egypt, as per the will of their father. Neither Pothinus nor Ptolemy XIII wished to accede to this demand. While doing his best to aggravate Caesar, Pothinus secretly plotted against the Roman ruler and sent word for Egyptian general Achilles to bring his 20,000 men to fight on his behalf. While Pothinus plotted against Caesar, Cleopatra made a bold move.
Ο διαμελίας, ούγαρε λάβει γιγνώσκης, την άμαξαν δι, του αποφέρει.
Come on, this gotta be good. I went this way and it's that way. Already. 22 if I have to run so much. Oh my. Where are you? You gotta be kidding me. Oh. Okay.
There are various descriptions of the encounter between Caesar and Cleopatra. One report states that she snuck into the palace alone at night. Another account claims she was accompanied by an ally and was brought inside the palace wrapped in a carpet bag. Though exactly what happened at this fateful meeting is up for debate, what is known is that Cleopatra met with Caesar and earned his approval. Pothinus and Ptolemy XIII were most vexed with this turn of events.
shield to seduce men.
With Cleopatra finally present, Caesar chose to act as mediator between the siblings in the hopes of a peaceful resolution. It did not take long for things to sour. During a banquet given to celebrate the reconciliation, there was an assassination attempt on Caesar. It was the Roman leader's own barber who thwarted the attack. Once it was revealed that the king's regent, Pothinus, had ordered the attack, Caesar had him executed. He then placed the young king under guard. Caught within the palace with roughly 4,000 troops, and with the knowledge that the arrival of enemy forces was imminent, Caesar sent for help from Syria, Rhodes, and Cilicia. He ordered his men to dig a ditch around the palace and build a wall leading to the harbor. This would ensure Caesar's access to the sea. When Egyptian General Achilles arrived in the city with 20,000 men, the battle for Alexandria began. With so few men at his disposal, Caesar could not risk a battle just yet. He sent ambassadors to Achilles in the name of Ptolemy to propose a truce. Knowing that the orders did not come from the young king, and angered by the pharaoh's imprisonment, Achilles had the messengers assassinated. With Caesar confined within the palace, Achilles positioned his troops around the city. Skirmishes broke out throughout the streets of Alexandria and went on for several days and nights. Though they were outnumbered, Caesar's men were able to hold the enemy back. This prompted Achilles' next move: capture the Roman fleet stationed in the harbor.
Oh! No way. Oh, this is... rough mode.
Idiodin! Elavni nugi gnostis! Πότε διδάσκεσαι Ελλάδη, τι πω πρώην και εχθές.
Αλλά είσαι εσύ, γνώση είναι Ελλάδη, δεν πόποτε καταίγεις.
This one's out of the way. That's moving all over.
Ο καλός, έβγε. Ιδιώτη, ώραν που λίμητη μηχανέστερη να εξελεύτης.
Οφθαλμού σου κατέχεις ή τι του οίκου σου.
Run down. I just wanted to. I don't think I have anything. Smoke. 9.
Although the palace offered protection, losing the port meant the end of help and supplies. Caesar knew he had to protect the fleet. While he and his troops succeeded in regaining control of the port, he knew it would be impossible to sustain. Caesar ordered the burning of the ship. Fighting their way through the Egyptian troops, Caesar and his men eventually reached Pharis Island. There, they took refuge within the... The exact chronology of events during the war in Alexandria remain imprecise. In either case, the Great Library was not completely destroyed. Experts point out that its location was too far from the harbor, and much later. The destruction of the Great Library may have been due to a number of fires over the ages. Its end was probably closer to the 4th century CE, when the Christian Emperor Theodosius I ordered the closure of all pagan temples. Where there are accounts of Achilles being in control of the battle against Caesar, it appears that instead Cleopatra's sister, siding with her brother, had him killed and put her ally Ganymedes in his place. During the time of Ptolemy I, canals had been dug throughout Alexandria to provide fresh water. Ganymedes had his men take control of these canals. After isolating their own water supply,
Θεοί, αδαΐσεστη, οφθαλμούς είναι αιώνων απόλυτων.
I have to find those also. Don't count here.
panic erupted in Caesar's men. They wouldn't last long without fresh water. Recognizing that the porous limestone could help them, Caesar and his men dug wells to restore their water supply. Days later, the 37th Legion, comprised of Pompey's soldiers, arrived by ship. Unable to come with help from the Allied ships, Caesar's victory enabled him to push the Egyptians back and secure the lighthouse. Gaining control of Pharos Island sent the Alexandrians into the sea and swimming back to the city. However, Caesar's fortification of the island didn't last long. The enemy regrouped and were set to storm the island. Panic-stricken, in spite of Caesar's encouragement, many of his men then fled their posts, either by ship or jumping into the... Caesar attempted to retreat, but Port Eunostos' harbor was overrun with enemy ships, preventing escape. Reportedly, Caesar gathered his papers and leapt overboard in an attempt to swim to an Allied ship farther out. Historian Cassius Dio claimed that Caesar would have drowned if he hadn't been able to remove his purple. Unhappy with Ganymedes and wanting their king restored, the Alexandrians approached Caesar with a compromise. Caesar agreed to release Ptolemy XIII after entreating him to spare the kingdom and remain loyal to Rome. Once freed, however, the king defied the agreement and continued the war. By this time, a faithful ally of Caesar's, Mithridates, arrived in Egypt, clashing with Ptolemy's troops at Pelusium. Outnumbering the enemy, Mithridates secured the region between Pelusium and Alexandria. Mithridates warned Caesar in time, and the two groups confronted the armies of Ptolemy in the Delta. In the Battle of the Nile, the Romans gained the upper hand, sending the Egyptians fleeing. In the tumult and panic, King Ptolemy XIII drowned in the Nile. After the siege ended, Cleopatra VII married her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, enabling her to reign over Egypt until 30 BCE. Under her rule, Alexandria settled into its position within the Roman Empire and eventually surpassed Athens as one of the most important cities in the Roman Empire. Julius Caesar remained in Egypt for a short time. He and Cleopatra would later have a son named Caesarion.
So, we were to go here. how it looks. Nice, right? Okay, let's continue. Woohoo! No. Back. Okay. 8. Let's start.
Welcome to Introduction to Alexandria. After conquering Egypt in 331 BCE, Alexander the Great decided to build a new city, which, as per his habit, he named. The city was built between the Mediterranean Sea and Lake Mareotis, which resulted in Alexandria becoming a crucial cultural hub and trading center.
Whoa.
Sumptuous buildings could be seen wherever one turned their gaze: the royal palaces, the many temples, the gymnasium, lush public gardens, and large avenues. With its incomparable beauty and advantageous geographic location, Alexandria attracted foreigners, intellectuals, and traders. Egyptian obelisks were highly prized by Roman architects. While Roman design previously favored the use of a single monument, Egyptian obelisks tended to come in pairs, and Alexandria had several main streets. Its most famous artery was the Canopic Way. It was lined with sumptuous buildings, houses, and temples, and was roughly 8 kilometers in length. This street was one of the most important shipping entrances to Alexandria, and often hosted processions and festivals. The width of the street, 30 meters, was abnormally large even by Greek standards. This is likely because the Canopic Way was made in a short span of time and based on an urban plan, as opposed to being slowly built over time, as was usual for the era. The Canopic Way originated in the western cemeteries, skirted the gymnasium, and then exited the city to head east through massive doorways towards Canopus. This structure was known as the Canopic Door.
And completed. Okay. So how many left? I'm terribly sleepy. I probably will finish soon. I'm very tired.
Light-bringing Phoebus, I am but your lyre. Dear my own, give me your song. I shudder with your fire.
My kingdom for a glass of water?
How shall I sing of thee, brightly shining one? So king of thunder,
Αμελείς εσύ. Πού καλάβεις η
Welcome to Alexandria, City of Celebration. Like most Greek cities, Alexandria offered multiple forms of entertainment. Most were related to cults, religious practices, and the festivities surrounding those practices. Among those festivities, the most important ones were the dynastic celebrations. Games and competitions were organized whenever possible in locations such as this. Like all good Greek cities, Alexandria had a theater. The architecture of this structure is Roman in style. This is because the team duplicated a theater from Cyrene. At the theater, one could witness the plays of contemporary comic and tragic authors. The play you are witnessing below is Menander's Dyskolos, more commonly known as the Grouch, a late and popular entry in the Greek comedies.
Oh my. 3. Psalm 3. And then moving further. So today we will just go through, I went through settings and stuff to see and set the game, and then we're moving further. Okay.
Welcome to Education in Alexandria. The education of young Alexandrians did not differ from the one generally dispensed elsewhere in ancient. Teaching was generally done outside, in the open air. In the gymnasium, students... Here, both girls and boys are shown attending a class given by one of the rhetoricians of the era. The team made the choice to show both genders attending class within the context of the game world. Even though it is historically inaccurate, the team felt it was not necessary to prioritize historical sexism over inclusive gameplay.
Okay. So, what's passport? Okay, I will have to see that later. I didn't see that. Okay, so this is my first new game after a while, and there'll be some more which I won't mention now. I'll tell you on my page if you watch, follow my posts. So there'll be some more things.
Welcome to the Great Library of Alexandria. Near the district of royal palaces and within the Moseon was the most... Throughout the centuries, fires and wars between Christianity and paganism destroyed the library, leaving nothing. While much of the collection was purchased at the government's expense, the library also obtained books through other means. Any books owned by travelers coming through the city were seized to be copied for the library. The copy would then be returned to the owner, and the original entered into the library's collection. Alexandria offered unrivaled intellectual and cultural attractions. Eminent scholars from Athens, Rhodes, and other Greek centers traveled to the city to learn. The great minds of antiquity were usually well versed in many disciplines, which were often associated to specific schools of thought. The Peripatetics, the Stoics, and the Cynics were among. Hypatia of Alexandria was a Greek mathematician, philosopher, astronomer. Callimachus was born in Cyrene and educated in Athens. After his studies, he moved to Alexandria to work in the Great Library. A poet and a critic, he strongly rejected the epic format of Homeric poems and instead fervently supported a shorter, more judiciously formulated style of poetry. His epigrams. It was in Alexandria that mathematician Euclid, the father of. How do you calculate the circumference of the earth? With a camel, 2 sticks, and shadows cast by the sun. This is what Eratosthenes. The earliest known and most complete armillary sphere of antiquity was the Meteoroscopion of Alexandria, with an imposing 9 rings compared to the 3 or 4 of most other astrolabes. Pythagoras of Samos was a well-known and respected philosopher and mathematician. He is best known for the Pythagorean theorem. However, there is proof that the theorem existed in Babylonia and India long before Pythagoras was born, casting some doubts as to who exactly originated the theorem.
Okay, did you hear that?
To discourage. Massage.
Forestation. Oh, let's move. My eyes are closing. I'm so tired. I probably won't manage to stay awake before night falls. I'm gone. Over. I'm over and out. Public screen today. Such a beautiful day.
Welcome to the Mosaion of Alexandria.
Sunny and warm. Like it's not winter. Now you can see me sharply.
The Mosaion was a sector of the city commissioned by Ptolemy I. The Mosaion was designed so that its buildings and grounds would accommodate. Herophilus was a physician who lived most of his life in Alexandria. He was able to perform the dissection of human cadavers on a large scale due to the permissiveness of the city in such matters. Among many other discoveries, he learned that the brain was central to the human nervous system. He also extensively mapped the blood system and measured the pulse with the aid of a water clock. In order to be free to pursue their research, scholars were fed and housed at the Mosaion at the government's expense. This freedom provided Alexandria's scholars a meeting space for intellectual pursuits and a haven for spiritual peace. Though nothing remains of the original Mosaion, it lives on as the legacy of our modern museums.
Okay.
Welcome to the Serafian of Alexandria. In a city of numerous magnificent attractions, the Serafian was considered to be the most beautiful temple of Alexandria. Located southwest of the city, on a small hill known as the Acropolis, the sanctuary was constructed during the reign of Ptolemy III, upon foundations which had existed since the reign of Ptolemy I Soter. Visitors of the Serafian climbed 100 steps to reach the courtyard. Libraries were installed in the porticos surrounding the square building, with its roof and columns adorned with gold and gilded bronze. Pharaohs were generous to the temple. Since the 26th dynasty, Greeks in Egypt had gradually integrated the Egyptian cult of the Apis bull to their own rituals. With the establishment of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the cult of Apis was further integrated. Serapis was also associated to other deities, including Asclepius, a Greek god of healing. It is possible that, as with the Serapis temple of Canopus, the sick would visit this sanctuary, sleeping there overnight in the hopes of being healed within its hallowed halls.
Almost. Then two more. Monotheism. Belief in one God.
Welcome to the Islands of Pharis. The Heptastadion was a bridge-like causeway connecting the island of Pharis to mainland Alexandria. Since its construction would separate the Grand Port to the east and the port of Eunostos to the west, it was designed with channels at each end. Along with creating separate harbors for the commercial and military shipping, the causeway served as a main aqueduct for the island's inhabitants. Its presence also helped protect the island and its ports from rough wind and sea currents. At the end of antiquity, the Heptastadion disappeared under layers of silt and soil, which formed an important sedimentary deposit.
I'm really liking this. So it's just here looking around. But I feel I'm gonna like this one. It's so nicely done. And I guess you could probably figure out already. I like some adventure discoveries and stuff. So this is me. Story.
While the Serafian was the most celebrated of the temples in Alexandria, many other temples were built within the city. Most of these structures have been complete. Both papyri and coins reveal evidence of many temples built for the gods. Poseidon, the god of the sea, likely had an edifice in his honor west of this island, as well as on the mainland. This temple next to you is dedicated to Isis Pharia, the divine protector of the lighthouse. This location hosted annual celebrations in the month of April, known as the Sacrum Pharia, in connection to the lighthouse. In her incarnation as Isis Fortuna, the goddess carries a rudder and a cornucopia, both symbols of good luck for navigators. Considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Lighthouse of Alexandria was a source of great pride for the inhabitants of the city. Construction began under Built on the island of Pharos, the stone structure was 3 tiers set on top of one another in a step formation. The second floor consisted of an Essential to safe navigation through the rifts and shallow waters, the Pharos was a functioning lighthouse. For several centuries, the Pharos was one of the highest monuments ever built by man. It measured roughly 110 meters in height, compared to the Pyramid of Giza, which was around 140 meters tall. Gradually, the structure was eroded by earthquakes and then completely destroyed in 1480 CE, when a fort was built over it. Archaeological excavations on the seabed have uncovered many blocks from the ancient building.
Okay. So, this one. And moving to the last one, and then leaving the game for tomorrow. Tonight, I need some rest. And I have some another video to upload for you. You'll find that tonight or tomorrow early morning on the channel.
Welcome to the Panean. The Panean was a temple built in honor of the god Pan, divinity of nature. Pan's attribute was his namesake musical instrument, the pan flute. His temples were usually located in caves and on high mountains, and were frequented by... To give proper honor to the god, Alexandrians built an artificial hill upon which they housed his temple to compensate for the flat relief of the city. The artificial mound had the shape of a spinning top or a pine cone, which was accessed by a spiral staircase. The top had a panoramic view of the entire city. Only such heights would be fitting for a mountain god.
Okay.
Welcome to the Hippodrome of Alexandria. The main hippodrome of the city was called the Legeon, in honor of Lagos, the ancestor of the Ptolemies. Alexandrians were great lovers of horse racing. They were fascinated by the rivalry of these races, the agon, as it was said at that time, that every competition brought. It was a struggle for glory.
Oh, kitty. There's the kitty.
The most important chariot race was the Tethrypon. Using 4 horses with the quickest harness to the front right, the charioteer would race for 12 laps, with sharp turns at either end of the hippodrome. The victors were crowned with garlands of olive and received prize money. Ye hymns that rule the lyre, what god, what hero, I, And what man shall we loudly praise? Verily Zeus is the lord of Pisa, and Heracles established the Olympic festival, while Theron must be proclaimed by reason of his victorious chariot with its 4 horses. Theron, who is just in his regard for guests, and who is the bulwark of Acragas, the choicest flower of an auspicious line of sires,
So
whose city towers on high, bringing wealth and glory to crown their native merits.
okay, guys, we're done here. So next time we're moving to Egypt and pyramids and this and that, and so will be a lot. Okay, so we're moving back. No, not back there. Where do I go now? Characters. How do I switch to that? Okay. Okay. Well, I like her. She seems nice. Ah, yeah. Suits. Yeah. Let me see what's there. No, I like this one. Okay, let's passport. Check that later. Controls and this and that and new. Okay. Okay, guys. So let's leave this for tomorrow night, and now going to rest. I'm tired. See that? Woohoo. Eyes closing. Okay. Bye.